So today I'll be talking about the 1987 movie, the Garbage Pail Kids movie, directed by Rod Amato, famed director of such things as Son of Hitler and The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. Something to note about this list, the criteria for a movie to be on here is that it needs to be a movie on the bottom 100 list provided by IMDB. Now, this movie is actually not going to be on that list. It has a rating of 2.7, which is awful, but not low enough, believe it or not, for the worst of the worst. But I have to make an exception for this movie. And now I see why IHE, or the I Hate Everything channel, modified his search for the worst to account for movies that weren't necessarily on that list. And that they were absolute horrors, but not in a good, enjoyable way. Honestly, I've had this set of notes in my possession for the last 3 months since I watched this movie, and I keep detailed notes so I make darn sure that I know everything that I'm going to talk about in one of these reviews. But man, this was hard. And I'll tell you what, I searched through my little workbook that I have for everything pertaining to these reviews, and I was looking for this movie in the set of the worst movies because I was just so convinced it was on that list. I had completely forgotten that I had made the choice back in early December when I watched this stinker to make sure that I put this in my wacky world of film. But as I was putting this together today, I can't do it. I can't. This movie is just awful. And it's not even like a funny kind of awful. It's not even a so bad it's good kind of awful. It's just awful in that word. So I'm going to be making an exception for this list. And if you're sticking around at this point, you're probably going to trek through it anyway, because, you know, why are you watching a movie review about something that's 30 years old? Because this was released back in 1987, making this the 30-year anniversary, you know, sometime this year. I don't even care to look right now. It'll be 30 years since this was released. Probably in the summertime. That would make sense, even though it's atrocious. So, what else is there? Yeah, I knew this was an absolute travesty. I knew this was just crud. You have the nostalgia critic who's notorious, well, okay, and the crowds of people who do these movie reviews and watch them anyway, for ripping this movie to shreds and calling this the worst movie of all time. And this has even been the subject of his, in more than just one video. He had a whole video dedicated to this movie, and then he had a list of movies that were the worst ones to review, and this was the number one, and he went on a whole spiel. And I ended up writing roughly 3,000 words for this bad boy. After editing, I might add. We're in for a doozy here. So if I knew this movie was going to be awful, why did I watch it? Did I expect it to be good? No. But I expected at least to laugh, even ironically, at just how appalling it really was. It turns out that even in my love of bad and corny movies, even I only laughed a handful of times at this piece of garbage. And I do mean a literal handful. Like, even an Oogie Love hand contains all the times that I laughed, which was 4. So all fingers on an Oogie Love hand were accounted for. Huh? The first time I laughed was when a pretty girl slapped Greaser Greg in a bar oh so eloquently named the toughest bar in the world. The name isn't what I laughed at. The second time I laughed is when Captain Manzini is talking to Alligator, and an exchange of dialogue occurs when Alligator says, "You're an educated man, eh?" To which Manzini replies, "Let's just say I did my homework." And Alligator retorts with, "And you take the words of a talking alligator?" Best line in the movie. The third time I laughed was when someone says, "That girl kumquat," and Dodger replies, "That girl tangerine." The fourth and final time I laughed was when Dodger beat the shit out of Juice in the very end of the movie. Now, you're probably sitting there and wondering what the hell I'm talking about when I mention the names Dodger, Tangerine, Captain Manzini, Alligator, Greaser Greg, and Juice. Since I've already watched a video where the grocery list is used as a joke, I'll liken it to a stoner tripping on the highest strand of kush and renaming everything the way a 4-year-old would. It's ludicrous. But the names don't stop there. Oh, no, they don't. So what actually happens in this movie? That's what you're here for, right? You know it's bad, but what can I tell you that will satisfy your curiosity so you don't have to see this movie? Well, the first thing I'll tell you is not to satisfy the curiosity by watching this set of dino droppings. It's not even a so bad it's good kind of movie. Rather, it's atrocious for all the wrong reasons. So the movie starts out in a playground in the middle of the day, and this boy Dodger is running away from a pack of bullies who look much, much older than Dodger does, but supposedly they're the same age. The names of the bullies are rather elegant too. You have the leader, Juice, Tangerine, the apple of both Juice's and Dodger's collective eyes, or is it the tangerine of their eyes? The boy minion, Wally, and the girl minion, Blythe, who doesn't know how to laugh, nor how to wear anything on her legs but zebra print. Seriously, did she just come back from Africa and hunt down everything she saw? None of the names are reasonable, and there's only one that'd be slightly reasonable, and that's Wally. They all look like they could legally walk into a liquor store and buy booze, but they go around and torment this kid who looks like he's not even in high school. That'd be fine and all if there was some context in terms of who they were and how old they were, but this movie just drops us into this scene where Dodger's getting the shit kicked out of him, and they get him all dipped into dirty and muddy water, and they steal his wallet and take all of his money and just leave him next to the bridge for dead. Well, for helpless anyway. While everyone just goes on with their merry day. And there are people in this park, I might add, too. It's not a completely empty place. This isn't some, hidden fortress or anything. So aside from the fact that no one cares enough to help Dodger, we're not provided with any reason here as to why Juice is doing this. Did Dodger do something to him? There's no character development here to let us know that Dodger did something to piss off Juice, or even show us that Juice is just a menace to society. I mean, you could show him stealing shit, or acting perverted around some innocent girl, or just any girl, period. Or even show him driving a car and revving its engine just to show you that he's a douchebag. Even the lowest common denominator would at least be a denominator. So there's no sympathy or understanding as to why Juice is doing what he's doing, and it just gives you no inspiration to care. Juice gives Dodger more and more hell throughout the movie, but the only reason it's ever chalked up to is it's a matter of principle. Well, what principle? What principles do you have? What values do you have? What is so important? And this is just the first scene. So because every scene in this movie is total dog shit, I'll break down the main points of why this movie is deplorable. The first point is that none of this movie is realistic, not even the world that exists prior to the Garbage Pail Kids. The second point is that there are no clear character motives, and the only one that has a slight glimmer of hope is that Dodger wants Tangerine. We'll get to that. The third point is that everything is terrible about the Garbage Pail Kids. Even the special effects and physical effects that go into these animatronics, I guess you could call them. Chuck E. Cheese wouldn't use them. The fourth point is that for a movie about the Garbage Pail Kids, they're not really the main focus at all. At best, they're the secondary cast. They're pretty much on the back burner while Dodger and Tangerine and Juice figure out their love triangle, and Dodger tries to get laid, or you don't know how much exposure he's had or hasn't had. You really don't know much about him aside from the fact he looks like he's in middle school. The fifth point is that the jokes and scenarios that are displayed in this movie are amateurish, despicable, gross, not humorous, even in an ironic sense, and not very well thought out. Finally, this movie does not know who its audience is in the slightest. How is this movie not realistic? I'll give a few examples, and they don't include the Garbage Pail Kids themselves, though they're certainly unrealistic as well. The first one is that there is apparently a state home for the ugly. Yes, there is a place where ugly people are sent to stay in cages reminiscent of freak shows or circus exhibits for a number of reasons. Here is a fun but not exhaustive list of the reasons: too silly, too hairy, too fat, too skinny, because, you can't miss one if you have the other, too gross, and that's where the Garbage Pail Kids end up going later. Spoilers. Too pale, and too crippled. Too crippled is in this movie. Okay. On top of that, people were paid money to send these freak show exhibits to their respective cages. Whose idea was this? Which writer decided that this should be made into a reality? I have to admit, I would have never thought of that being an actual thing. I want to meet this person and know what the hell they were on when they decided that this was a good idea. So, on top of that, the second one is that when the Garbage Pail Kids crash a movie theater, that happens, they're watching Three Stooges shorts. I mean, even for the 80s, this was a bit old-fashioned, and if it existed at all, it was rare and minimal, so I guess they found the one theater that still has Three Stooges shorts. Okay. They'll have to let me know where that one is. The next thing is that Dodger apparently doesn't have to worry about school or parents that ask about him. There are no parents for Dodger in this movie, and there's no school for Dodger in this movie either. My best guess, because this didn't aggravate me as much as other aspects of this movie, was that this was just summer vacation in the 80s, and parents tended not to watch their kids' every single move the way they do today. I have to assume that to keep any semblance of sanity that I have left. Which, I don't know if that's even there. The next thing to point out is at the very beginning of this movie, when the garbage pail itself starts to ooze out and the kids are causing a ruckus, the paintings shift their eyes back and forth as if it's auditioning to be the next Mona Lisa. I didn't realize that paintings could move their eyes back and forth. Look. I understand this is all, a fantasy anyway of having the Garbage Pail Kids come from outer space and they're gonna invade your town. But I'll tell you what, if the world that they're entering isn't reality the way these things in this world tend to be, how is this weird stuff meeting reality? It's weird stuff meeting weird stuff. There isn't much of a contrast there. What makes the Garbage Pail Kids stand out so much? They're hardly even in this movie. And I have to admit, as a final point for this realism, the outfits in this movie. What the hell? Look, this is too 80s for the 80s. I know this is the era of just ungodly fashion, but good God, they're uglier than sin and make the Garbage Pail Kids look attractive. And speaking of the Garbage Pail Kids, these effects, this isn't like a special effects loaded action movie by any means. And these are just animatronics, as I said before. But, man, what the hell went into these things? So these are actually played by little people, minions, dwarves, midgets, whatever word you want to use. My point is, they were played by people who played the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi just a few years before. So this was a major downgrade for sure. And these lips that they all have, they don't know how to close. I mean, I know I have a tendency to not close my mouth, even when I'm not talking, just kind of like, oh. But, at some point I do close my mouth like this. But these lip flaps never close. And there's an alligator amongst these Garbage Pail Kids. And it's particularly noticeable because he has this big old jaw that never closes. And it's like he's going to eat things. And you'll see why that's not a good thing. And these kids, so there's 7 of them. You got Greaser Greg, you got Valerie Vomit, you got Messy Tessie, you got Nat Nerd, you got Foul Phil. Excuse me, this is 5. And then you have the Valerie Vomit, and you have the alligator. So that makes, 2 and the 5. 7. And they're just awful. And you can have awful characters. Really. I mean, most movies have those. At least someone that's despicable, but they're awfully designed as well, and they're awfully put together in terms of what drives them. They have a defining character trait. They pretty much just took the card that they were on and the novelty factor and just listed that as a trait. There isn't really any personality to any of these outside of that one trait. You have Greaser Greg threatening to carve out an IOU with his little knife. And I don't remember John Travolta being that hostile, unless you're referring to his character in Carrie. Then maybe it makes sense. Valerie Vomit talks a lot of smack, but doesn't really vomit until the end, and the climax, if you can call it that. Foul Phil whines like a baby and supposedly has a foul mouth, but in comparison to the rest of these guys, it's not really that foul. They all stink too, so if you're going for that angle, it doesn't really work that way either. Messy Tessie is really just messy in the fact that she puts boogers on everything. Ooh, that's one riveting character right there. You have Nat Nerd and his defining characteristic of pissing himself. And he does this at least like 4 times, probably 5 times throughout the movie. And that's the whole joke. It's not even like, something funny happened to him. I mean, probably the most noteworthy of the times is when he had a really good poker hand and he pissed himself. You couldn't even have him say like a funny punchline? Anything else? I mean, piss jokes really aren't that great, but do it once and have your cheap laugh and then move on. Try something else. It just gets really aggravating. And you could have at least included like a pocket protector and a calculator or something else that's nerdy. That's the other thing too, So the whole nerdy aspect is pissing yourself. Have you not even looked at a Halloween costume? Or like any kind of nerd party? Anything? Man, you're missing out. And you have Alligator, who's just an alligator. Oh, okay, well, an alligator that eats human eyes and tries to bite off people's toes. That's the most fleshed out character that you have. Then there's one more character of Wendy Winston who knows how to break the wind, And that's it. There isn't a reason for you to care about them. Supposedly they came from this garbage pail that arrived from outer space. But what was their home planet like? How did 7 small animatronics fit into one garbage pail? Were they just on trading cards and came to life once the pail oozed out with its slime? So back to the human characters, who are just about as full of garbage as the kids are. And that's sad. Juice is just a bully through and through. You have no idea why he does what he does. You don't know if he had abusive parents. You don't know if someone egged him on and he owes someone money. Like Han Solo owing a debt, for example. You don't know if Dodger killed his parents. Why does he have so much beef with Dodger? Maybe he's just a wimp who can't handle a fair fight with someone his own size. My best guess. Blythe and Wally are just filler characters. Wally is a dumbass who is just Juice's goon and has no character motivations of his own. Blythe, at least, seems to enjoy hanging out in the rough crowd and craves total psychos. Even with her eclectic choice of clothing, she at least makes me laugh in an ironic sense. And Tangerine. I found her to be the most interesting character in the movie. You have someone who's dating this asshole named Juice, who occasionally has a heart of gold, Tangerine, not Juice. But it gets dwarfed out or, looks small in comparison by her love of money. And she knows how to manipulate people and, turns Dodger into her little pony that she makes clothes out of. And she doesn't ever ask, or, well, she gets this inkling that he's making all these clothes not all by himself. And she convinces him to make all these ridiculous clothes, and some may have called it a Michael Jackson jacket. I would call it, perfect with the time. You really have this weird setup of her taking Dodger to these nightclubs to sell clothes, and then she has this fashion show, which ends up being like the focal point of the movie, of these Garbage Pail Kids from trading cards. This is what they signed up for. That's stupid. And how do these Garbage Pail Kids know how to sew anything in the first place? Is it essential to their character? Where does their inspiration for all these zany 80s clothing come from? No explanation. They go over to a cleverly named non-union sweatshop. Yeah, that's really the name of the sweatshop. Singing about working together and being cooperative while they steal the store's shit. And as if we didn't already know that these kids were garbage. There's a Captain Manzini I briefly mentioned who owns the antique shop that Dodger works in, supposedly. Even though no antiques get sold ever, and he doesn't even look like he's in high school. And Captain Manzini apparently has magical powers, though they're very spotty and only as effective as the plot demands them to be. He can let the monsters loose but can't get them back into the pail, of course. He speaks as this pretentious philosopher and is supposed to be a source of inspiration for us, but he's never around when the bullies are, and he never even asks Dodger if he's doing okay outside of working for him. And what about this Dodger anyway? He's the main star. It should be the kids, but I've already accepted at this point that they're not the main stars. Dodger is. He's really creepy. Not even, charming. We're supposed to be charmed by all these things, but he sniffs Tangerine's hair and looks like a pedophile doing it, even though he would be the child. Whatever. And he ends up motorboating her at some point, so that's a thing. And Tangerine does weird stuff too. She makes out with his ear and does all this tongue licking, which it's one thing in a more adult movie, but this is supposed to be a kids movie. This really isn't the right place for that, guys. And I didn't realize we were in Cougarville. I mean, she keeps acting like she's this MILF, even though she's 14 or 15, supposedly, in this movie anyway. And there really isn't even any conflict between Dodger and the kids. He doesn't question why they're there. He isn't scared by them. He gets a little frustrated when they're not making clothes fast enough, but that's about it. And he never questions why they're there, or never even has any aggravation and demands to have them thrown out. What are the stakes here? Why should I care? And for a movie called the Garbage Pail Kids movie, there really isn't a lot of time spent on the kids themselves. They're just here to fulfill Dodger's mission of eventually winning over Tangerine. And it's not a very admirable cause. When they do spend time on just the kids, they stand around a broken TV screen that can't figure out how to make it work. They play poker, where one person has 4 aces, Nat Nerd, that's what he pisses himself over, while the other player has a straight royal flush. How does that work? Hi, hello, that requires 5 aces. That doesn't compute. And why is Alligator constantly trying to eat people's toes? And why did Alligator and Wendy Winston go to the toughest bar in the world? Why is there a bar in this movie? I mean, yeah, I like going to bars, but I'm in my mid-20s. I can go do that. The kids this is really aimed for are like 8 or 10. Why is this a thing? Why is he eating people's toes and this is just passed over as okay? And this really just is not appropriate or suitable for kids here. And I keep harping as if, this is all supposed to be kid friendly, but it's building up to my biggest point. The main reason this movie doesn't work is because this Garbage Pail Kids movie does not know who its audience is. Now, to be fair, okay, well, maybe to be slightly fair, this was initially intended to be a horror movie, but then it was decided to be made into a kids movie because kids were the ones with all the trading cards. And yes, if you didn't know, these were real trading cards that were spoofed off of the Cabbage Patch Kids cards and toys and things like that. And I have to admit, there's some novelty value to them. They're fun. The cards are fun. They have their little puns. They have their time and place. It's not in this movie though. I enjoy the concept of these gross trading card characters coming to life, and I enjoy horror movies. I love horror movies. But they make this movie for kids, and they dumb this movie down to make it marketable to them, but they don't really make it suitable content for young kids to view. And on top of it, the entire movie is a mess. The character motivations don't make sense, not relatable, and the character development is lacking for everyone. The elements made up in this world are nonsensical, and everything in this movie is way too disturbing for kids, while the writing and gross out elements are way too childish for adults. And by trying to incorporate elements from both the tastes of kids and adults without knowing how to properly mesh them together, this movie pleases no one. Honestly, with all movies out there being remade, I would love to see this remade as a straight up horror movie because so many elements of this movie were good horror movie elements. You have these creepy kids. You have this bully who doesn't really have much of an explanation that could be fleshed out. You have this protagonist who could use some understanding, and you have this tangerine girl who has her own soap opera that she could be in. You have this Captain Manzini who could really be of assistance here to make it all science fiction and fantasy if you're not going to go for horror. But if you're going to make this into a movie that's marketed to kids, you need to put some serious thoughts into what kinds of messages you plan on sending those kids. And if you're not going to do that, then at least make a movie that is cohesive and makes some damn sense. Because this movie makes no sense. You have the stay at home for the ugly, which would exist in no real world. So when the Garbage Pail Kids come into this world, it doesn't feel like they're crashing reality. It just feels like they're the second set of stoners at a commune. Really. It's not that much different between their worlds. You have this whole mess of a story of the Garbage Pail Kids who are really just relegated to making clothes for Dodger so that he can please this girl that he's creepy about. And there's this bully that just is a deplorable character who has no real motivation for beating up Dodger. And Tangerine begs him not to make so much fun and beat him up so much. They throw him into a sewer, like on 2 different occasions. There's apparently a sewer for a hot tub that the kids cause mayhem in for the bullies. That's just disgusting. Makes me want to never go into a hot tub. You have the final fashion scene at the end, and these Garbage Pail Kids strip off the clothes from the models and just leave them in bras and panties, because that's really suitable for young kids right there. Maybe this is for like the teenagers too. I don't know. That they just think that if they're scantily clad that it's gonna be appealing to 13-year-olds? Maybe, I don't know. But really, this movie is just a mess and doesn't know who it's made for. And that's why it doesn't work. And I have one final thing for you. Here's a lovely picture of those Garbage Pail Kids. Hope you have nightmares tonight. But yeah, this movie sucks, and if you couldn't tell, I hate it. And it gets an F. It's the worst movie in this entire list, hands down, no questions asked. Alright, see y'all later, bye.